Scott Rasmussen is going to be joining us in a few moments of ScottRasmussen.com. Alfredo Ortiz with us, back for a second segment. We're going to three-way everybody in and have a lot of fun here this morning on Friday. Alfredo Ortiz is, as you know, the president and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com. The number one advocate for small businesses and entrepreneurs in America. Go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com. And we've got Scott on as well of ScottRasmussen.com. If you haven't signed up for his newsletter, do it. Comes to your inbox every day. It's free. Free is good, right? Bernie likes free. Besides, download my app. That's free. Everything is free these days, especially my app. That's really cool. Do that. Now, let's. I got to get back to Alfredo for a second. Hang on there, Scott, with us. Alfredo, thanks for joining us for another segment. I ran out of time. In your column at The Hill, I'm so glad you pointed this out because there was so much fun in that debate with the moderates blasting the commies in there. But I loved, what was it? It was Hickenlooper, right? Governor Hickenlooper from Colorado. He was talking about the Green New Deal that a bunch of them had backed, right? Kamala Harris and the following day, but just on that stage, Bernie and Senator Warren. So why don't you elaborate on this? Was in your column, but he said, look, I did the math here. I got a little scratch pad, and if we go forward with the plan that you have signed on to legislatively, that it would cost every household, get this, $70,000. Not $700, not $7,000, $70,000. And it goes unreported by the legacy fake news media. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I know, that was great. He called it a disaster at the ballot box. It's fantastic. I mean, I love how these guys are just blowing apart this Green New Deal and the healthcare for all proposal, which again we know is just a complete government takeover of our healthcare system. I mean, it's great. I mean, you gotta love guys like Hickenlooper and Delaney now. I mean, they really are carrying our own water now for us. I mean, I hope the American public is really listening and watching, and quite frankly, starting to get pretty scared of some of these policies that are being put out there. But again, it's setting up a great paradigm for us for 2020, right? It's completely binary. It really is about their ideas and their socialist agendas, which, again, if going back to our campaign, it's really about taking, right? It's about more government control and taking away our freedom versus what we believe in, right? Which is about capitalism, free enterprise, and freedom and liberty, and believing that, we can be our own, masters of our own destiny, that we don't need the government to control that and tell us how much we need to eat and where we can eat and what kind of foods we can eat, et cetera, et cetera. It is just a complete binary paradigm now that's being set up, and quite frankly, it makes our jobs almost easier, right, John?
Well, it does, because rather than us having to blast it, we can just go right to the debates and take the sound bites from John Delaney, Hickenlooper, Michael Bennett from Colorado the other day. There's a handful of them that are really carrying our water on it. I want to get back very quickly to the loan, not the loan, to the reduction in interest rates. And you were talking about how that would impact small businesses, because even that 0.25% makes a difference. And it's easy to say speculative, but I just wanted to share this on the radio with my listeners. We have a philosophy in our company that, I'm 61 years old, right? I have a small company, so I'm just not interested in taking on a lot of debt. Now, there's some debt you have to take on as a small business. You have to have a line of credit, meet payroll, things of that nature, if cash debt doesn't come in. But we're very reluctant to take any, like, if our attitude is, if I can't pay for it, I'm just not going to buy it. I'll just wait. But as soon as this interest rate went down the other day, we needed, I think it's like $15,000 of new equipment, which I had put off for a year. I just put it off, going with what we have. We fix it. But it's about $15,000. Soon as that went down, and this is a perfect example, a real life example with a small company like mine, Common Sense Media. Soon as that interest rate went down and it was official, we went right to our bank and applied for a $15,000 equipment loan to buy it all and replace it, take advantage of that, afraid that it's going to go up again. Well, what does that mean? Well, I just bought $15,000 of new equipment. Then I have to pay people to install it. Then you got to pay people to ship it. Then people have to manufacture
and John,
it.
Don't forget, you combine that with still one of the elements of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, right, which is immediate expensing.
Exactly. Well, that's the other thing, because I can expense it immediately. So
Right.
all of that plays into and we are not a big company. We're a small company, but all of that plays in to a small company investing into the economy, and it has to do with what? It has to do with that decline in interest rate. So I just wanted to bring that up because it's easy to talk theoretically, but then it actually happened to us. So thank you for that. One more question, and then I'm going to get to Scott on his poll on school choice, if I may. You mentioned that Job Creators Network is in favor of a constitutional amendment that has a percentage of debt to GDP. Alfredo, what percentage is that? What? Give me a number.
That's one, John. I would say we still need to do more homework on. We're in the middle of looking at that. Before I can give you that number. But again, it's going to be something, right? Because having no debt is that's just not even something that I believe. I think some level of debt is just required, right? You can't operate an economy or business without it. But again, keeping it within a reasonable level, and again, we're still trying to figure that out. And to expand though on this idea, they're calling it. The Democrats call this idea modern monetary theory, by the way. And this is why I also think it's so important to get this amendment out there to, quite frankly, thwart any kind of ridiculous implementation of this idea that they call modern monetary theory, which is really basically using debt to fund the socialist agenda. And that is the slippery slope on the way to becoming Venezuela, right? And that's one of the reasons I think as a country we should be so concerned about that and use something like a debt to GDP ratio amendment on the budget, because then this prevents that kind of thinking to really take hold in this country, no matter what. If there is a change in the administration, if there's a change in the Senate or whatever, make this amendment, and this will keep us from really going down a very, very slippery slope that is very dangerous for our country and for our economy.
Well, I love the idea, and it's certainly something to rally behind and maybe get the president to look at if we can get a second term, which I think we will. All right, I'm going to bring Scott Rasmussen in to the fix here. I can't go a week without getting my Rasmussen fix. And Scott, sorry we were late getting you on. Great to have you with us. You're on with Alfredo Ortiz, President CEO of the Job Creators Network. And Scott, I want to get right to a poll you did the other day on the number of Americans now that want school choice. And then I also want to talk about maybe changing the name for that. Can you elaborate on that, Scott Rasmussen?
Well, sure. 78% of voters nationwide believe that parents should have the right to choose whatever public school their child attends. And then we went a step further and said, what happens if a school is not providing either a quality education or a safe learning environment? In that case, 58% say that parents should have the right to use public funding to pay for either a charter school or a private school tuition. Only 21% disagree with that idea. And look, this is part of something we talk about on healthcare, on every other issue. Americans want choice. They recognize they have more power when they're acting as a consumer than when they're acting as a voter. They want to make the decisions close to home on things that are really important to them. And, for parents, there is nothing more important than their children, and they want to make sure they get a great education.
So let's talk about the potential as a pollster, and I want to get Alfredo involved here. Let's talk about the potential of rebranding school choice, right? Because it's got negative connotations to a lot of people. They think it's going to cut teachers out or whatever. But at the end of the day, school choice is about empowering parents to make decisions, and especially parents who don't have the resources to make decisions outside of the public school system, like, say, we do, all right? So Alfredo Ortiz came up with the idea of changing it to freedom to achieve. Scott, as a pollster, is there something in a name, if I mean, or is it just putting the same lipstick on something else? What do you think of that?
Well, a great example of that challenge is Republicans call President Obama's signature achievement Obamacare. His supporters call it the Affordable Care Act. And when you ask about the Affordable Care Act, you get better polling than you do when you ask about Obamacare. But in public discussion is Obamacare. And the freedom to achieve is a great phrase, but I'm afraid that people would still stick with it as school choice. And I think the challenge here, people recognize that there are problems with our school system. They recognize especially the disadvantage that puts inner city children at. In fact, some polling that we've just released shows that 72% think that one of the very important things you could do to help inner city children is to provide a better educational system to fix our cities. Mm-hmm. But when you get into the details, people get nervous, and it's because teachers are, again, so important in their students' lives. I think change is coming in this field, but it's going to come from new technologies, interacting with other laws, and parents simply finding ways to work with teachers around the system.
Alfredo, so you just heard from Scott. He's like, you can't really rebrand it because school choice is what everybody talks of it as, and you want to rebrand it. So can you respond to Scott?
Yeah, no. Hey, Scott, by the way, hope all's well. No, I think he's got the right point. I mean, rebranding anything, coming from my marketing days on branding, it's never an easy thing, right? Especially since the Democrats and the media want to call it school choice because it doesn't really, pull well from just words. But look at the actual support that the idea of school choice has. What Scott just talked about, 78%, right? I mean, I think that's the bottom line is we need to emphasize the fact that parents want this. And we need to fight back because when you think of the two biggest areas where we have the biggest issues in our country, right, it's on healthcare and education, the two areas in which we have the most government control and red tape and the least amount of what I call kind of free enterprise being able to actually impact it. I mean, we need massive reform in our education system so that we can address, the growing and future needs of a workforce. The reason why we have, almost a couple more million jobs and we have people to fill them right now is because there's a skills gap issue in this country. It's not a wage gap issue. And the reason we have that skills gap issue is because our education system is failing our kids.
Well, the bottom line is this, Scott Rasmussen just said 78% of Americans want to further opportunities in school choice because they see, even for themselves or they see for others, that a lot of lower income kids are just trapped in a failing educational environment with no way out, and school choice offers them the only opportunity to get there, opposed obviously by the education unions and the lobby and things of that nature. Just want to tell everybody, go to scottrasmussen.com, scottrasmussen.com today, because he is coming out with his poll, his first big poll, tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern. Scott, if memory serves me, I saw your site. 5 p.m. Eastern, you're going to release your daily update on the race for the Democratic presidential nomination. And you think that poll is going to show if there's any impact from the debate. Let's be prognosticators for a second. Now, I'm going to go around the horn. I'll start with me, then go to Scott, and then Alfredo. I thought over the 2 days, the two big winners were Bernie Sanders on the first night, because I think he reestablished himself as basically the authority on all things socialist. So I thought he won big on, I guess it was Wednesday night or Tuesday. I thought Warren was the big loser because she was, I don't know, just like playing second fiddle to Bernie. But then on Wednesday night, I thought Biden was the big winner. And I think you sometimes win by not losing. And I think Biden did that. He played four quarters Dean Smith keep-away basketball. He didn't make any major mistakes. Everybody hit on him. He's fine. And somebody's going to have to beat him. That's my analysis. Let's go to Scott. Before the polling, now you can't, if you saw any of your own polling, you can't cheat, Scott. So
well, I have seen a lot of polling data that's been coming in every day, and so I'm going to offer a little different perspective. I think that people like us who are politically obsessed and who are watching this intently tend to believe that every phrase and every statement uttered on that stage is going to impact the polls. You have to remember we're in a nation of more than 300 million people, and only about 10 million watch the debate. And of that 10 million, most of them have a rooting interest. They're either a strong Biden or Warren or Trump fan, whatever their perspective might be, so they're not likely to change. I agree with your assessment about Joe Biden being the big winner, mainly because he didn't lose. The challenge for Biden is going to come in Iowa. When it's actually on the ground and votes are being cast and people in Iowa take their first voting responsibility very seriously, can Biden win there? If not, he loses this whole electability argument. And I'll go one step further. I think the other reason that Joe Biden could very well be a winner from this debate round and others is that he is now establishing himself as the most moderate candidate in the group. And what that will mean is he'll be able to, if he wins the nomination, he will be able to present himself as the moderate choice who defeated the enthusiastic but misguided socialist candidates. And when you win in that way, you do get some benefits.
Well, I also thought the other reason I thought Biden won is because I thought he was the adult in the room in that debate. I really thought he came over as, Democrats are looking at him and saying, okay, I might not agree with everything he's saying, but he's like an adult based on some of the other nonsense that went out there. Let's go to Scott Rasmussen. Thank you for that analysis. Let's go to Alfredo Ortiz, Job Creators Network.
Yeah, John, I think it was the Republican Party that was the big winner from this week. The stage was set clearly for a binary decision. I mean, it's becoming clearer and clearer. And the moderates, quite frankly, the moderate Democrats are taking out, doing a pretty good job of taking on and taking out, the socialists on stage as well, the socialist Democrats. So I think the big winner was the Republican Party overall.
All right, so let's go around the horn and make predictions for who you think is going to be the nominee. Scott, we're not going to hold you to this. You're a pollster. But just if you have to go out and predict it now, and I gave you guys $100, then you had to make a bet with free money. Okay, let's start with Scott. If you had to make the bet now, who's going to be the Democratic nominee?
Well, if I had to bet today, I would bet Joe Biden, but I wouldn't bet very much money. I think he's at best about a 50-50 shot, and whoever comes and who will be second after that, it's impossible to know. What I think is going to happen, actually, we have a great role model for this. In 2008, Hillary Clinton was a dominant front runner, and then some guy named Obama won the Iowa caucuses, and she could never recover and catch up. If Biden does not win Iowa, he will be in serious trouble. If he does and he continues to win after that, then he's got a pretty clear shot at it.
Alfredo?
I couldn't agree more. I called Biden last month, and I'm still sticking with Biden.
All right, guys. Well, I already put my bet in on predicted. I bet Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee, guys, and I just hate to burst your bubble here. I'm going to be right again, like I am every time. And he's going to be the nominee because of just what Scott said. He's going to win New Hampshire.
Hey, John, when you lose, you owe Scott and I dinner at Charlie Palmer's.
I'll get you dinner at Charlie Palmer's in D.C. I took Bernie Sanders. I got 15 cents on the dollar, which means for every dollar if you bet $1, you win $1.86 if he's a nominee. So I got great odds on him on predicted. But just what Scott said, Bernie's going to win Iowa, and then he's going to turn around. He's going to win New Hampshire. I don't know where Biden goes after that. He's 0 for 2. There is no electability. So Scott nailed it. There is no electability. Sanders has got the best ground game in Iowa. I saw it with my own eyes. In 2016, I covered his campaign. He's going to win Iowa. Then he's going to turn around. He wins New Hampshire. That's the end of Warren. Now somebody's got to beat him in South Carolina. Biden's out by then, right? Then what happens?
Yeah, well, the South Carolina, if Biden wins Iowa and is looking like he's going okay, the big test for him will be in South Carolina. First major primary with a large African-American population. Booker and Harris will be going hard for those votes. And it's also the week before Super Tuesday. People, when we talk about this process, we all have a memory of a time when these debates and primaries unfolded at a slow pace. In the first 2 Tuesdays in March, 47% of all Democratic delegates will be selected. So this race will be over very quickly in terms of the delegate selection, and then we'll have to look and see if anybody can assemble a majority going into the convention.
Well, and then you got to look at the other thing, gentlemen. Let's say you go to Milwaukee. I've only got a half a minute here. Let's say you go to Milwaukee, and in the first ballot, there's no superdelegates. And Bernie Sanders has the lead, but he doesn't have a majority. And now you go to a second ballot, and the superdelegates kick in, and now you try to steal it from him again. I mean, can you imagine the fire that is going to go on outside of the Milwaukee arena if they try to steal it from Bernie again? There's going to be tremendous pressure on those Democrats not to do that. That's why I think at 85 cents on the dollar, I think Bernie Sanders is the best bet. Look, you bet $1, he wins. You win $1.85. It's a good bet. I got to go, though, guys. Love you both. We'll see you next week. John Fredericks Radio Network. Denver Riggleman coming up. I'm going to defend him. He did a gay marriage, and now he's got committee members in Virginia censoring him. Don't we have bigger issues to be concerned about than a gay marriage in the 5th District in rural Virginia? Knock it off. I'll be right back. John Fredericks Radio Network. Go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com.